Okay, so now there's a scene where Aragorn leads the group to a place called Weathertop, which he says will be very safe. And naturally, what happens? Merry and Pippin and Sam screw it up by starting a fire, and they start to have a meal. And right away we see that Merry and Pippin, especially Pippin, we see later on, that all these characters start to, now we start to see what they represent, essentially toward the story. And Pippin especially, and Merry, kind of represent death, or the coming of death, or definitely great danger coming, because of course Frodo is stabbed, and they barely get away. And then we're introduced to the character of Arwen, played by Liv Tyler, who says, I can help him. And right away we get this, and she's an elf, by the way. And we now see what the elves represent as well. They represent life. They kind of represent what the hobbits don't represent, or at least the two troublesome hobbits represent, which is death. And so she takes Frodo, they get to Rivendell after one final encounter with the Black Riders. And right away we're reintroduced to Gandalf, who we get to see his story of how he escaped Isengard, how he got to Rivendell, sort of. And Rivendell represents heaven, in a way. It kind of represents this safe place that you get to. It's kind of like, almost feels like, let me use an example here of you're playing a video game and you get to the goal. Rivendell is that goal. It's the place you get to where you say, okay, we've done this, we've accomplished this, we made it. And it's really nice also production-wise, or I should say art direction-wise. It's very well envisioned by Grant Major, the production designer on this film. I can't remember, did he win the Oscar for this? If he didn't, I know he was at least nominated. So yeah, a brilliant job with that as well. And then we it's kind of weird, because then Frodo says, he gets this scene with Sam where he says, I'm ready to go home. He says, we've done our job, the ring will be safe here, let's go home. And that's kind of the end of the first plot of this film. When actually it's more like the beginning of the second act now, rather than the beginning of a second plot, where Elrond, who's the leader of the elves, tells Gandalf, he says, okay, now that Isengard and Saruman has betrayed us and joined Sauron, now Rivendell is a target, basically. He says the ring will not be safe here. If they get news that the ring is here, and they will, Rivendell will be destroyed. And so Gandalf says, okay, what are we going to do? And Elrond says, well, we have to figure out a way to get the ring destroyed. And they say, how do we do that? We throw it into the fire of Mount Doom in Mordor, which is the stronghold of the enemy. So they, of course, get the scene with the Fellowship, where they form the Fellowship. But before that, we're introduced just in one scene to another man from Gondor called Boromir. Probably one of the finest supporting performances in this film by Sean Bean, or Sean Bon, or I think it's Sean Bean, yeah, that's how you pronounce it. Where he and Aragorn are kind of sitting here with the sword of a sword that destroyed Sauron way back in the day, almost 3,000 years ago, where he goes right up to the sword and he kind of says, this is the mystical sword, ow, I poked myself, and he kind of, his curiosity, right away we see this is a flaw with him. Right away we see he's kind of a boaster. He's kind of the guy who says, okay, let's do, the guy he says, okay, I deserve to lead this, let's lead this, and of course he's the biggest fool of all time. So, but he does have his strengths. He does have his strengths, as we see later. But, and then we have Aragorn, who's also a man, who is the exact opposite. He is very, very respective, where, Boromir kind of drops the sword and he says, frick that, the stupid thing cut me, what do you expect me to do, put it back up? And Aragorn just, picks it back up, kind of honors the sword and puts it back down. Of course, we see that he is actually Isildur's heir. He's got the same blood running through him, and so yeah, it's natural for him to kind of say, okay, I'm going to respect this because this is my past. This is my heritage, almost in a way. And then we get, I think, one of the weaker elements of this film, which is we kind of get a little bit of the backstory of a relationship between Aragorn and Arwen, which is kind of like this classic Romeo and Juliet tale, which is, okay, Arwen is immortal, and Aragorn is man. He is not immortal. He will die eventually. You know, he will die of old age, whereas Arwen will live forever if, as long as she isn't, actually, she will not die due to old age. So, and it's kind of that classic tale of they can't fall in love, but they do fall in love and all that. And there's nothing special about it. Nothing special about it. Of course, they resolve it later. But right away, we were just briefly introduced to it, and it goes nowhere. Arwen is not seen again, but of course we have to keep moving in this plot, this train of a plot. The pacing of it just has to keep going. We can't stop and have time for this. So of course they put it in the next two films, but it's kind of a flaw that I wish they could have either just cut it completely and save it for the second or third film, or probably both, or at least taken a little bit of time out to make it relevant to what's going on. But it's right away, I think, one of the few flaws in the film. So yeah, that's just a side point of mine that I say, okay, you could have done this a little better. But then we get the scene with the Council of Elrond. With everybody around, they're trying to figure out, okay, what the frick are we going to do with this stupid goddamn ring, which is destroying everything, and which is the evil force here that we have to get rid of, or else everything's going to come crashing down, So, and all of them argue about what they're going to do, and we see with each race, we have a distinctive problem where they cannot get along. The men are boasting. The elves are using their wisdom. The dwarves are kind of feeling unimportant or, trying to prove themselves. And the wizards and the hobbits are caught right in the middle of it, and they don't know what to do. Each race has their problems or their stuff that doesn't clash, that doesn't come together, that doesn't bind them together to form one fellowship. So we cannot, therefore, have we cannot have more elves in the fellowship. We cannot have more dwarves in the fellowship. We cannot have more men in the fellowship, or else the whole thing will fail. But they do decide, or at least Frodo decides, okay, I brought the ring this far, I guess I can bring it the rest of the way. And it's one of the scenes in the movie that I think is actually one of the strongest. With his character especially, where Frodo says, I will take it, I will take the ring to Mordor even if I don't know where I'm going, how I'm going to do it. He says, I will do this because you guys are basically being sissies, can't figure this out, so we'll leave it up to the people to the hobbits, we'll leave it up to us, who, let's play our part in this. Let's be the brave people that we can be. And it's a rousing scene where kind of the cheers in the audience start to go as the fellowship forms, and one by one people join in. Gandalf says, you're not going anywhere without me. You're not going to get 3 steps out of Rivendell without my guidance with you. And Aragorn says, you have my sword, and that means he's in. And Legolas, who represents the elves, joins in as well and says, you have my bow. He's representing the elves. We have Gimli, who represents the dwarves, saying, you have my axe as well. You have my weapon. And then Boromir, who is definitely the one that we're most questioning here. Why doesn't Elrond just say, no, we've got one man, but we have one elf and one dwarf, why do we need another man? But, he kind of, in a way of saying, forgive what I said earlier, because he's really, really boasting about how we could use this ring to our advantage. And, everybody knows that can't happen. But he kind of says, okay, I'll forgive myself here. I'll join in this quest and we'll destroy this ring together. That's the kind of attitude he throws around. And, of course, the 3 other hobbits just say, throw us in, what the heck, And right away we say, oh, no! Because Pippin wants in, too! So, yeah, we eventually know that people are going to die because Pippin's in there. And it's a shame. But it's right away a great, great scene. And we're about halfway through now. And I'm excited. At this point in the film, I'm like, let's get this. let's not stop the movie here. Let's keep going. And it's kind of hard to do that, especially in a film that's 3 hours or close to 3 hours or over 3 hours long. Which is at one point you want to say, okay, they could have stopped it here, and if they want to do a sequel and tell the rest of an extended story, then sure, start it there. But no, I say let's keep going. This is good so far. Let's keep the goodness going. And yeah, so kudos to the film for that.